Howdy, all of you delicious people. I'm here today to review Madam Web. So, as of course, if you are to have been a person that has clicked on a video a time or two before coming here, thank you. But then also, I am to want to talk for roughly 6 minutes about what has gone on in the channel and the time between now and the last video. So, I firstly am to go on and give you a brand new setup that I'm just using today and hopefully further on. Because I had a prior tablet that had stopped working. It just started to not turn on one day. And I was like, you know what? I really need a tablet that turns on and works. That would be great. And so I was lucky to be able to get another tablet. And so with that gain, I had also lost some images and a number of other things. So here is to, of course, be the new setup. If it is to, of course, look better or worse or indifferent, here we are. Secondly, uh, this is a thing called a microphone. For those of you who are not tech savvy, or maybe had not gone on and seen an episode of The View, or any other talk show that you have seen a microphone being placed upon a person's clothing. I was to achieve said microphone through an app called Temu, Temu. And first off, there were advertisements for this app when watching the Super Bowl, American football. And I had downloaded this app prior to that, but some people might have seen it via the Super Bowl. I was to have gone into this app, and at first I was like, okay, this seems kind of shady, but I looked more into it and saw that T-Pain had even shopped at Temu. And the more and more I looked into it, I was like, okay, this app is legitimate. And you can get free items, and at some point when I get more items, I'll probably do a Temu haul at some point when we get there. But yeah, you can go into Temu and you can play Farmland and or Fishland and be able to get free items. It takes quite a bit of process, but you can get certain items for free. Free shipping and handling, free dollarinos for you to get an item. With that said, again, this app seems shady, but it works. The end goal, you get free items at some point. So check this app out. It does rely a lot on invites as well as you doing this mobile game. So the more that you invite people, if you're a celebrity and or famous, the better off you are. You can go on and get freebies or certain credits of certain kind, whether it's PayPal or Temu credit via invites and so on and so forth. If you go onto the app, you'll see what I mean eventually. If you look into it more. But hey, if you are to be a person that goes into this app, link me up so I can go on and possibly get an item for free via the help of you, vice versa. So, lastly, this is a cell phone, a phone of sorts. I have, of course, gone on to use this quite a bit of times when I am to need cast list and or notes that I had placed upon my phone. And so when we get into the big spoiler part, I'm gonna have to pause this and then get my phone because my phone is having problems just charging as well as having a good battery life. So At some point, I hope to replace it, but right now I'm just kind of stuck with this phone. So hopefully, that'll work well, and I'll be able to fully be able to use it for the spoiler part. Hopefully, man, we were just batting 1,000 on everything today lately. But hey, that was my huge hesitation for probably not doing a lot of videos quite often. Um, but hey, I'm here now, so here's where we are. So now let's get on and let's talk to about Madame Web. Firstly, Madame Web is a film that says it's a superhero movie through images and a trailer and whatever, what have you. But I honestly feel that Madame Web is to be better sold as a horror film instead of a superhero movie. To me, it just seems like a horror film. So, for those of you who are going to want to watch a film with women, hot women, attractive women, whatever, uh, in spandex and or leotard and what have you, costume regalia, you will be disappointed. You really will be when you go on and see this film and understand why I say this. They clickbait you into saying that it is a superhero film, but it's really not. And again, you'll understand if you go on and see this film. And so for me, there are certain scenes in this film that I think consistently happen, especially when it comes to like stopping the Ezekiel character. There's certain taxis and or ambulances. If you've seen the movie, you probably will get the gist of what I mean. That I was like, okay, like that is kind of consistent in this film. As also there just kind of being certain consistent things kind of going on in this film beyond like the obvious time loop scenes that are going on in this movie. For those of you who have no real information about this film and are going into it completely blind, if you guys are to have known of a character called Uncle Ben in these Spider-Man movies, Uncle Ben Parker, is in this film. And that is to, of course, be an appealing reason to go on and see this movie. And Ben Parker is in this movie a surprisingly decent amount. A lot of people could bejokingly just be like, hey man, Ben Parker should have been like the guy in this film, but he isn't. He should have really been the key character of this movie, but he isn't. But yet, we have me have problems with this film, and there's certain things that are kind of laughable about this movie. This movie is slow. And like I feel like this film might have had a lot that got like lost in the fact that it might not had the budget that it was going to have. More than likely, I would hope that there is quite a bit of budget that ran out of this movie. I would love to hope that. So, uh, more than likely for the grading of this film, I have to say that this movie was actually a decent movie. Bizarrely. Like, I want to go on and give a thumbs up to this movie, and a lot of people will be like, why? For those of you who had gone on and seen this film, a lot of people may have gone on and hated this film or thought it was a joke and whatever have you, but I just bizarrely just I don't know, maybe like I'm broken at this point and I'm seeing other movies where they have like singing planets and cats that puke up people, and I'm just like, you know what? Like, can you just give me a normal film? As normal as you can give me, besides Madam Web flying off to Peru to come back, and it seemed like just flying off to Peru was just this easy task that didn't take like a week there and a week back, and I don't know, like, we have a film that, yes, there is a lot of problems, but I just bizarrely just liked that it was a horror film. Or to me, felt like a horror film. So I would go on and say, like, for people, give it a chance, but don't go to the theater to see it. More than likely, this film will have been forgotten by the audience of mass, and will probably go on to some, like, probably Stars or some Sony thing of where it goes, or maybe even Amazon at some point. And people will go on and be able to mass see it. I don't think it's going to go on Disney Plus anytime soon because it's a Sony thing. But surprising things have happened. So, uh, wait till it's streaming. It'll probably disappoint a lot of people. People probably say that it's one of their top 5 worst superhero films because it's not a superhero film whatsoever. It really isn't. And let's talk about little pieces here and there. One, did you guys go on and after this film was over, really want a Pepsi after this film? If there's not one thing that says that this film had no money, was the obvious like Pepsi can holding, because that's all Madame Web does. She just holds the can and she's like, yeah, I have this Pepsi. I'm not going to drink it or anything. I just have it on me. And it's all she does. She just holds on to it. And then towards the end of the movie, with the big fight, there is this massive Pepsi Cola sign. I don't feel like these are any massive spoilers because it's just window dressing. So here is one thing that like is a scene in the film, but it's not a real spoiler. But I don't understand why it's in the movie. We have a scene where women are doing CPR for no reason whatsoever. Because the CPR has no connection with anything that happens in the later parts of the film. So it's a waste. But we have the women that are doing the CPR, and I'm like, okay, we have women's chests that are jiggling, and that's a way to just sell your film. And I'm like, kind of laugh at that. But then not only that, we have our hero characters that have diddly squat of combat experience whatsoever. And seemingly the only way that we can consistently keep Ezekiel at bay till it becomes a comedic kind of part of the film. To me, like, that was really starting to get laughable. How we really had to just ram and bash and really try to just beat the crap out of this guy, but he just keeps getting up like the freaking Terminator and going after these women. And then I was like, okay, like, man, that spider bite that he got, like, that must be working overtime. I'm like, how is it that he had, like, did he have, like, healing factor? Can anybody rationalize to me why this guy, like, was seemingly unstoppable? He just kept on going. But then the way that they kind of defeat him at the end, which has no connection with what Ezekiel was having a whole thing about in the early part of the film. There's no connection. There's no connection. There's no connection. Why? Uh, but so let's go on, and I'm trying to think here if I gave like my grading of this movie. After just kind of just starting to just talk and talk more about this movie. The grading of this film is actually surprising to even me. Because here's the simple facts, ladies and gentlemen. This movie is a horror film, I feel. Other people could just call it garbage and call it a day if they actually saw it. And say that it's probably one of the worst films. But I saw that it was a horror film, and I enjoyed that part of it. And I could overlook a lot of the things that this movie does. It's slow. It does nothing with its characters, even the main one, or it kind of doesn't really present well that Madame Web is going to be a leader character or lead character in this film. It just feels like she's thrusted into this position. She's like, well, I guess I'm just gonna have to just be a leader in this group because she just is a cat lady. And yeah, but again, trying not to say too much about this film when I'm kind of putting this all together right now here. So let's get into the grading because I've spent too much time here. The grading of this film is weird because I've never gone on and stated this kind of grading before. This movie is just a decent film. I will bizarrely go on and give it a thumbs up. It is probably the weakest okay film that I have gone on and graded. But for the life of me, I cannot go on and say that this movie is the worst superhero film I've seen. I, a couple of days ago, had gone on and seen The Marvels. And I think I am now broken about what quality film I am to have these eyes see after seeing The Marvels. So with that said, I'm really trying to go on and adjust my grading system from here on out because I want a thumbs up a film. I really do. I really want to just finally see something that I can say I can justify reviewing and be happy about it. So that is Madame Web for you. Surprisingly, a decent film that, yeah, has a lot of problems. It really clickbaits you into going and seeing it with good looking women in spandex and tights, CPR, and what have you. Jiggle, jiggle, and yada yada. So let's go on and let's get into full on spoilers. A lot of people are going to have a variety of different opinions upon this film, and a lot of people will just think that I have lost my mind with what I am to have gone on and said about this film, because a lot of people will brutally hate it. But here is just my opinions. So, with that said, let me go on and pause. Let me get the cast list, and of course, let me go on and get my notes. Hopefully, my phone will last the full on spoiler review. By the way, for those of you who are to go on and not want to take the time and see this movie in theaters, because that's where I went on, I saw it. I went and actually paid a ticket and saw it in theaters. That's why this isn't on the day of which that it had arrived or the day after. I saw it in theaters. And yeah, and still I was like, well, wasn't disappointed with that, with me going to a theater and seeing this film. But anyways, so uh try an app called Zellophonic. Z E Z E L Ivonic. Zellophonic. If I spell that incorrectly, my apologies. It's been a while. Zelivonic. Zellophonic. You can go on and see Madame Web for absolutely free on that app. It might be of questionable quality, but you can still watch the whole entire movie. I actually went back after watching the film in the theater and kind of also kind of watched it a little bit again in Zellophonic, so I can kind of be like, okay, wait a minute, like, where did she go after this scene? Because I don't remember that part, or oh, let me double check what happened here. Let me see the scene here, because somebody talked about this on a review that I watched before I came on here. So, firstly, spoilers. I'm going to give you a countdown now. We're going to go on to full on spoilers. So, spoiler time, spoiler time. It's about that time again to spoil this movie. Let's get into it. Firstly, we go into Peru. This is to be the 1970s something. It's like 73, 78. Not quite sure. It's somewhere in there. I don't remember. But we're in Peru. We have both Ezekiel and Constance Webb, and they are going on and trying to obtain this spider that is to possibly be either poisonous or is to have these certain power property things. And we have the two of them, and they have these kind of these little goons off to the side. And we have Constance, and she is pregnant with child. She is a bun in the oven. She's really just gonna possibly pop at any moment. She probably should not be traveling and or being in the Amazons / Peru, but here is where she is. And we have Constance, and she is going on and trying to find this specific spider, and she of course finds it. And immediately when Constance is to find said spider, Ezekiel is to shoot his other goons that he has, just fire them all up, just pow pow pow, and struggle with the gun and kill Constance as well. So we have a whole Ben Parker situation going on with another parent who dies in another Marvel film. This woman has bun in the oven child, and we come to find after Ezekiel leaves and Constance is bleeding out, we have the Phantom. No. No, not the Phantom. That is a completely different superhero film. That was an African superhero. We have Santiago, who is to be like the Man of Spider or whatever. He is to be this goofy looking tribal Spider-Man-ish character. He is to go on and obtain said Constance Webb. And he is to take her and bring her to this cave. So we have yet another superhero movie with the setting of a cave. And it's not Batman. So, or Batwoman, or whatever. And so we have these tribal Spider-Man guys, dudes, and they have to, of course, have an emergency birthing of who is to, of course, be Cassandra Webb. I actually should know that name because I knew a person who had that name in the past, but looking at names and so on and so forth. Cassandra Webb, Madam, which I'll call her through the rest of this review, Madam, they give birth to Madam Webb, and so we go on and do that, and we don't have Cassandra, who sticks around with the tribal spider people, because you would think that's how that would just play out. Like, she would just be like Tarzan, or be like the Phantom, or a number of people that would just be stuck in that place and would be like forced to live the tribal life until they reach the age of 18, and then they run off to the city afterwards. Usual story, but that doesn't seem to be what happens here. So Santiago goes on and hands, of course, this baby off, and is like, well, hey, I will be here if this woman ever decides to, like, seek us out. Because at some point she's going to go on and need some information, and I'm the only dude that has it. So hopefully I just live long enough for her to just decide to come to the cave one day, and whatever day that will be, I will just be right there, just be like, aha, look at me, I'm here. Hopefully this guy is just an immortal dude that just ages slowly, I hope. So, the first part of this is in the 1970s something or others. And then we fast forward to now, we have to age Cassandra up to it being 2003. So now we have some kind of Marvel timeline-ish things going on here, and we're all trying to be people who are like, okay, like, how does this connect to the Spider-Man films? I know the Tobey Maguire movie takes place in 2010. I know the Andrew Garfield movie takes place in yada yada, and so on and so forth, which supposedly this movie was going to somehow connect with the Andrew Garfield movies, but then it decided to not go that route. Maybe there is an end credit scene where there was to be a connection of it. Don't know. There's a lot of things that they decided to do that probably didn't make sense in this film, but they were there. Like, we had like a blockbuster in the background of one of these scenes, and I'm like, oh, okay, wait a minute, like 2003, like, were blockbusters still? Well, I guess there still was like a blockbuster that existed even past 2003. Hence why they even did that show called Blockbuster on Netflix. But to each their own. So it's 2003, And hopefully I'm going to say most of this movie in the order of which that it comes into. But there's going to be a lot of swerving, and there's going to be a lot of scenes where it's like, well, hey, wait a minute. Like, you mentioned the scene, but it's not in the order of the movie. Believe me, the scenes, I might even forget a scene or two. Let me know. Whatever. It's okay. It's cool. So we have Cassandra and we have Ben Parker who in this ambulance driving around just trying to find some people who are either hurt, murdered, or injured, or whatever. And while they're just driving around listening to whatever songs of the time were, which actually there was some interesting and some good tunes in this movie, surprisingly. I was like, yeah, I'm liking the soundtrack of this movie. I might not completely like the film, but like I can get into some of these songs, and like some of the music might have been at some point something that I might have listened to within the past. So I was getting into the tunes. I liked them. It was jazzing. It was good times. So again, we have people driving around in ambulance just like with one hand on the wheel, not even two, just hey man, I want to look cool. I want to mime this properly. We have Cassandra who's driving around with Ben, and we see this one girl who is just kind of jaywalking. She's giving Cassandra the finger, and it's like, well, hopefully we never see that girl again. Come to find out, this middle finger flipping girl is to, of course, be a character in the film called Mattel. Or Mattel? They never really say her name enough in this movie for me to care. But that is who, of course, to be who that character is. And so we have them continue to drive to this accident where there's this bridge, and this car is going to seemingly fall off this bridge. Kind of feels very much like an Amazing Spider-Man scene, where we also had a bridge where Andrew Garfield had to like get the kid, and he was like, "Hey man, put on the mask, and you'll feel invincible." That whole scene, if you guys remember Amazing Spider-Man, it's been a while since I've even seen that film. But why do I remember that? But it's fairly similar. So we have Cassandra who rescues the guy and cuts out his seatbelt so Ben Parker can drag him out of the car. But then we have Cassandra who gets stuck in the car, and the car falls off into the bridge. We're like, oh no, you're going to kill Madame Web off so quickly? Well, might as well just change the name of the film, right? No. She goes on into the water, and I guess we have this kind of Deadpool moment where, of course, in the Deadpool movie, he's stuck in the tube, and being in that horrible situation, like, has his powers activate. We would have to assume that this near death situation gives Madame Web her power. So she kind of had to die to be able to have her powers all of a sudden like start to come to fruition here. So we have, of course, Ben, who is to go on and rescue said Cassandra, and we have her getting her heart checked, and Ben is like, well, hey, like, I'm going on and kind of doing the best I can to make sure that you're like the best of shape here, but you should really go on and see a real doctor. And Cassandra's like, no, like I'm perfectly fine. And Ben is even looking at the devices and whatever, what have you, and he's like, well, actually, you're doing better than fine. Wow. But then all of a sudden we have Ben who says the exact same thing about like, well, hey, you need to see a better doctor. And Cassandra's like, didn't you just say this? Isn't this line of dialogue something you've already said, Ben? And Ben's like, well, what are you talking about? And Cassandra's like, oh, it's weird. And this stuff just continues to continue to happen in the film, where she has these kind of deja vu or repeated lines that are happening, and she's consistently like, hey man, what's going on? Like, didn't you guys just do this? Didn't we just say this? Didn't you guys just. What's going on here? What's going on? And like after the like first or second or third or 89th time that this happens and she doesn't pick up on it, I start to get a little bit annoyed, in all honesty, about it. Where it just kind of repeatedly repeats and she's not grasping what's going on. To the point of her like going and seeing a doctor, and the doctor is like, oh well, hey, maybe you should just go home and like sit on your couch and see some old films, because I know you, even though I don't really know you, like you're gonna go on and just watch some old films, right? Like you aren't gonna watch like The Price is Right or anything, or see anything that's really of good quality that you can check out on any app or whatever. No, you just want to go on and watch Christmas Carol during a time of which that's not during Christmas time. Because that makes sense. Do people go on and watch Christmas movies year round? I might. There might be an interesting movie called I Come in Peace that might be an interesting Christmas film or something like that. I saw something recently that was like, looks interesting. Back to the film. So we have Cassandra, who is at the hospital, and she ends up getting this photo from this little boy. And it's her reward for being a hero. And we have Madame Web, who is so awkward because she's not a leader, and she's just like, what do I do with this? Huh? What do I do? And Ben Parker is just like, hey, we'll just have it on you, and when like he's not looking, just throw it away somewhere. And while Cassandra is getting the photo or the picture that this kid drew, she's also seeing Julia, which will be the redheaded girl that I've seen in quite a bit of other things before prior hearing about this film. I was like, you know what, I like this actress, even though she's kind of been on like Euphoria, which that show gets just very bizarre. Just really, it has like one thing going on in it consistently, and man, just that is the weirdest thing to have be a consistent thing on a film or show, which that is a show. But I've watched the reviews, you'll know what I'm saying. So it gets weird why it consistently does that. So we have Cassandra and we have Ben, who at some point in this film, they're sitting down together, they're having fortune cookies, and we have Madam, who reads her fortune, and her fortune, it seems, is blank. Because she reads it off to Ben, and it just says, like, I will, and then there's nothing. And so Ben is like, well, clearly the fortune cookies have ran out of ink, and so we're not going to get any fortunes anymore. So what's the point of going into eating at this place, this establishment? Why are we even doing it? So Ben also, while joking around here, he also at some point mentions to Cassandra about going to this baby shower and like at some point this stuff comes up. I don't know, I don't remember exactly when, but it comes up. We also have Ben who mentions that he is currently with somebody, and we have to assume that that is Aunt May. But they never go on and just clearly say it because there's so many things that we have to kind of like say that they're there, but not really. Like we have Mary Parker, who is also in this film, that is Ben Parker's sister, and she has a baby in the oven. She has a baby. It's gonna come in this film, and we have in the baby shower where and I thought that this scene was such a waste of time, but it's there anyways, where they're trying to figure out the name of the baby. Like, yeah, I don't know exactly what the name of it is. Like, I have an idea, but like, I don't want to tell you guys right away. We're gonna have a game. We're gonna have to figure it out. And so, like, we have this whole scene where they're trying to figure out the name of the baby. Give me a second here, and I'll get to certain other scenes, but I'm gonna stick with this one. And so we have Cassandra, who's hearing all these baby names like Steven and Butch. Is it Baroma? Is it Whistling? You're gonna call your kid Whistling? No. I'm just joking around. You're gonna call your kid Wyatt Earp? Dose? No. So all these names are being kind of like said, and Mary's like, well, no, it's not that name. But then Mary turns to Cassandra. It's like, well, like, what do you think the name could be? And Cassandra says this name, and it's like, well, no, that's not the name. So Mary goes on, and she's like, the name of the kid is Pa! And a balloon pops. We bizarrely have so much sound in this film that is to either try to scare people, and that freaking is annoying because I hate that. It's a cheap scare with horror situations and what have you, but we have a balloon pop, and God, did that just like the ears? I hate that. I hate sound that is to try and scare people. Oh my God, is that just hate it. But so we have the scene repeat where they're like, Cassandra, like say the name. What do you think the kid's gonna be? And like Cassandra's like, didn't you just ask me that? But we have another time loop situation. And Cassandra's still not figuring this out. As well as also she is seeing O'Neill and Ben to establish their friendship together uh, near this grill, and Cassandra's holding this Pepsi as if she's trying to sell it. And I'm like, okay, like we obviously have to have like product placement, but that was like the worst, the worst product placement. So let's back a little bit. So we also have Ezekiel, who's also in this movie, for reasons for a villain to be in a film. And so Ezekiel is sleeping with this hot woman. This woman that I think doesn't really have a name in this film. Because if you look in the IMDb, I think they just call her Beautiful Woman. I don't think they have an actual name for her. I heard him say that she was some security person. And so Ezekiel is like just betting this woman, this beautiful woman it seems, and he was to have gone on and had a dream that one day he is to have had a dream where he dies in said dream, and the dream is to be him fighting some Spider Woman, and he loses at the end of this fight. So he's basically Anakin from Star Wars Episode 2, where he continues to have this dream over and over and over again about him losing against these women. And he's like, you know what? I just got to do something about these women. I got to hope that I can figure out a way, with technology being the way it is, uh, to be able to figure out who these women are. And clearly, the woman next to me is conveniently having that technology at her fingertips, and she's going to easily enough give me the passcode by me poisoning her with my poisonous touch of Ezekiel. You know, and I know, like, Ezekiel, like, isn't that huge of a Spider-Man character, but I don't remember ever Ezekiel having poison or being able to poison people in the Spider-Man comic books. But then again, maybe I don't know this character that freaking well. Really, I know the character eventually gets killed off in the comic books. And I actually liked the guy. He actually looked cool, like with his really just white looking gray hair and his green and suit. Looks like a very interesting character. And I think I do have the comic book of his first appearance because I actually liked the character. Didn't know he was going to be on Madam Web in the distant future, but great grab nonetheless. So, because I actually liked the character, and that's where I was kind of getting excited about this film. Not excited for it to be a good film, but having the existence of Ezekiel was a thumbs up for me. So, we have Ezekiel who poisoned this woman who gives him a code red, Mountain Dew, and he then goes on to have this like hench lady, I believe her name is Amaria, and Ezekiel goes on and gives, like, I'm assuming the sketches to Amaria, and Amaria goes on and is to be able to have like photos of these women, and it's like, okay, well now we need to go on and be able to like have some kind of facial recognition software to know who these women really are. And that's where we get the other three women besides Madam Web. And so Ezekiel's like, okay, now that I know who these people really are, and why didn't any of the other superhero films do this? We could have figured out who all the good guys were. Like, snap, if Ezekiel would have just taken the exact same route, all the other villains could have easily known who Spider-Man was, or Batman, or Superman. For those of you that don't know sunglasses, you know, the sunglass thing, or the glasses. No, you can't figure out who that freaking guy is just because glasses. It's really tough. So, uh, we now fast forward. Cassandra is done with her baby shower. She's to, of course, go on and make her way to the subway, where this guy is like, yeah, there's crazy things going on in this town. There's a whole new level of crazy and crazy. Even Madam Web says, yeah, crazy. Subway, I tell you. And so Madam Web sits down, and we have this guy that eventually sits next to her and consistently asks, like, I'm on the right train, right? And then every single time that Madam Web gets to going through these subways, the guy just pops in there. He's like, I'm on the right train, right? I'm right. Yes. Should I sit here? Do sit. Me? Yeah, repeatedly. I don't know why. But so Cassandra goes on to realize that Ezekiel is coming for not her, but these women that she has never met before in her life by handshaking and knowing their actual names. But she has kind of briefly seen them because when Cassandra was to also at one point be done with her day, Cassandra was to go home and give milk to this stray cat and go on and see the Christmas Carol movie and have the scene where the ghost or where Scrooge is talking to the ghost of future, and she's starting to see how her powers can work when she opens the window and the bird flies, and she's like, oh, I just saved that bird via the time loop. Maybe I can use these powers for good, you know what I mean? It's one of those moments. We also have Cassandra who is going up her flight of stairs and she's seeing one of the girls open this door and she's like, well, hey, I'll get the rent to you by tomorrow. And the guy is like, sure you will. Sure you will. Like, we don't have the same guy from the Tobey Maguire films that it's like, rent? We should have that guy in this movie. We have the goon from the other Spider-Man films in this film. Really, we have this like quick scene where we have this burglar guy, and it's the same guy who is supposed to be the killer from the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movies. He's in this film, legit. I was like, wow, I know that guy. And it was cool to see him in this film, even though there's like continuities to be what it is and whatever. But anyways, moving on. So we have Cassandra, who one way or the other knows all these women, but it only really comes up until they're in those woods and they're talking about how Madam Web's powers work and whatever. But we'll get there. So Madam Web is in this subway, and we have this one old lady who's just screaming. She's like, ah, killing, killing going on. Because we have Ezekiel who goes on and he choke slams people, and it's freaking awesome. How Ezekiel just kills people is great. It's the best thing in the film is how he just like choke slams people. Now he's like choking, like grabbing some peeps, and he's just slamming them, or he's just choking them and poisoning them. And I'm like, okay, I just want to go on and see this movie again at some point to just see Ezekiel doing like the choke slamming, grabbing, killing, poison thing. That's probably the funnest thing of this film. And so after we have gone on and seen like just Ezekiel coming in and he's like, hey, I'm just gonna choke someone out. Is that okay with everybody on the subway? And the one old lady's like, no. We have Madam Web that's like, well, I should probably step in and stop Ezekiel from choking a woman or two or three. Me also. And so when Ezekiel is making his way downtown into the subway, and he's like, yeah, I'm in the subway now, I'm gonna come after and just start doing some choking. Madam Web goes on and tells all the girls, hey, you guys are gonna die if you don't come with me. Come with me if you want to live. Terminator, I don't know why I referenced that. So the girls are like, hey, you trying to abduct me? Are you trying to take me? Yada yada. So Cassandra is trying to convince them, like, no, you need to leave now, or you're gonna get killed by this other dude, not me. You're gonna get killed by the Terminator guy. That's really who he is. Ezekiel is basically the freaking Terminator. That's how they kind of build him up in this film. He's unstoppable. He's the freaking Terminator. It's great. So, Madam Web's like, hey, come with me if you want to live. And so the girls are like, well, I don't really want to come with you, but I guess I probably should. And, like, Cassandra even takes one of the girls' skateboards, and eventually the skateboard breaks in half, and they have to run off anyways because Ezekiel gets rammed by a freaking taxi. It's awesome. So they're running out of the subway, and Ezekiel is like looking at the window, is like, wait, huh? You're supposed to be here so I can choke you. Here's where you get choked. And so Ezekiel is like ticked because he's like, man, all these girls were in the subway, now they're gone. How is it that this woman like just knew to grab all these girls that I was gonna choke? What's going on here? I need some download of information. So we have the girls and they're running off, and they're going to these police officers, and they're like, please help me, like, this guy, he's coming after us, because this guy is now in his full-on evil Spider-Man getup, and it's to supposedly look like the tribal Spider-Man, but it's different. It looks cool, I will admit that, but then also, it's cool, but then it also looks like crap. It's cool crap. It's weird. It dances somewhere in the middle there. So you're seeing like just Spider-Man just be crawling, shimmy, 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 trying to get to the girls, and they're like, "Why can't anyone else see this Spider-Man guy? It seems like we're the only person that can see him." So we have the girls that run off to get to the police, and they're like, "Oh, these people will help us." And immediately we have where Cassandra, like, she's almost getting cuffed, and they're like, well, hey, like, you're doing something illegal here, like, we're not going to believe your story, we're just going to book you and whatever. And then all of a sudden we have Ezekiel that comes in and just is decking all of these police officers while the girls are trying to like escape the grasp of Ezekiel. Ezekiel is just grabbing people's legs and choke slamming, and maybe he's doing an F5 or a number of moves. Maybe you go to sleep. I don't know. He's going to sleeping people. So Ezekiel is just choke slamming and wrestling and killing killing some officers. And the girls get away in the process of that happening. So that leads Cassandra to steal this taxi while this driver was getting this money and talking to this girl. Maybe he was trying to get a date out of the deal. Who knows? But taxi is now stolen, and these girls drive off. And we're having Cassandra she's trying desperately to get rid of these kids. She's like, I don't want to be your, like, protector. Like, no, like, I saw the first Terminator movie and I know how that goes. Kyle Reese dies at the end, for those of you that haven't seen a movie called Terminator. Technically, they even retcon that in other Terminator films, but still, Kyle Reese dies at the first Terminator film. So Cassandra's like, dude, I'm not going to be like Kyle Reese. No. Come with me if you want to live to a certain point. Then I'm out skis. So Cassandra is trying to like, well, how about I dump you all off at your folks, at your parents? And every single one of these girls are like, well, like, I don't have a boyfriend, and like my parents are all out of town, because we'll find out that like Julia, like, she like doesn't have a mother, and her dad is always off doing like business things. Like we see him briefly, and we have Mattel, where her parents are always like off overseas, and we never see her and whatever. And we also have Anya, I believe is the other girl, who like we also find out that like her father got deported and her mother's dead, and like horrible, just like these kids have no real parents, so feel sad for them, right? You probably should. So we have Cassandra that goes to this forest and is to tell these girls, it's like, hey, sit here while I figure out some crap. I need to figure out my mother's backstory. While the girls are like, wait a minute, like you're trying to tell me that you have these powers that you can see into the future. Like, how does that work? We have Mattel who throws a rock at like Cassandra, it hits her. It's like, what the heck? And she's like, well, hey, like I thought you could see into the future. And she's like, it doesn't work that way. I don't know how it works. You jerk. So Cassandra is trying to explain her powers to the girls. She's like, hey, like I don't know how these powers work, and so like luckily I was to be able to just save you. And so she rattles off how she knows every single one of these three girls. And Anya's complaining to Cassandra about how like she doesn't pick up her mail, or she like farts while she's going up the stairs. And all kinds of crap. And just like Cassandra's like, well, yeah, but who cares? Like, I just saved you. Who cares? That's what she should have said. I just saved your life. Stop bringing up like my like stupid crap. Cassandra goes on and is to remember that that Julia was in the hospital and she saw her dad, and then Mattel was the one giving her the finger from earlier. So Cassandra, one way or the other, saw all these women ahead of time, bizarrely. So Cassandra's like, okay, stay in this woods. Don't do a stupid thing, because I know that you girls are gonna do something stupid because you're young and you're eventually gonna be wanting to go into public because there's men around where you can dance and do all kinds of stuff. But no, just restrain yourself from dancing and having a good time. Roadhouse. And so Cassandra leaves and she goes and reads her mom's book because she, I guess, never had the time before to read a book. But she was like, well, like, you know what? I had like so much time during COVID to just pop and crack this book open, but I just never wanted to find out things about my mom. I never gave a rip, but now that I have all the time in the world because I'm on the run, she's like, you know what? I'm going to find out more about my mom and possibly a spider tribal tribe that's in Peru that might have some information. I might have to fly to Peru and hopefully get there like within like an hour, and then talk to Santiago for like 20 minutes and then fly back and be able to save these girls again by hitting Ezekiel with a truck or an ambulance or a car or whatever. So we have Cassandra that is going on and reading this book, and she's enjoying it. And she's like, I don't want to put this book down, but I have to, because I might need to save these women's, because they're going to run out of beef jerky, and I was supposed to give them a sandwich. And so these girls are running out of jerky. And like, no sponsor, I guess, for beef jerky, sadly enough. We have Pepsi, choice of a new generation. being marketed in this film. Oh God, Pepsi. So the girls realize that there is a diner X steps away. And so like, oh my God, a diner where we can make and eat food at? Sounds great. So the girls go to this diner, and instead of them trying to be inconspicuous, and we just have just some random guy at this diner who is looking at these three girls, and it's like, hey, like, I gotta go on and I gotta call the police and say that these are the three girls that are in the Cassandra kidnapping situation, because Cassandra is listening to the radio, and in the radio she's hearing this report, and she's like, oh well, yeah, like hopefully they're gonna go on and nab that Spider-Man fella, that Ezekiel guy, and get him good. And we go on, and they're having a report about Cassandra kidnapping these girls. And she's like, wait a minute, like, I'm not doing that. I'm trying to protect them. They got that story wrong. And so we had the guy who was calling to tell the news or tell the cops, like, hey, man, I think we have the girls right here. You guys better pick them up. So in the meantime, these girls are doing whatever they want. They're just kind of having like all of this food. And I'm like, who's paying for this food? How do they have the money for said food? All they had was like beef jerky on them. Where did the money come from? And then we turn around and have like these girls that can be like, oh, okay, I know where I'm going to get this money from. And they're dancing on this table and they're shaking what their mother gave them. Nothing wrong with that. And because we got to figure out some way to get some audiences' butts in these seats somehow, or keep them in the seats because somebody might have left after 15 minutes of this film. And we have the girls dancing on this table, and Ezekiel arrives, and I'm like, okay, they're going to die. And we have them being choked yet again, poisoned, choke slammed, DDT'd, wrestling moves. Maybe the elbow came in there. And so we have a just brawl just taking place. We even have Julia, who mentions that she knows karate, but she doesn't know jack crap nothing. And so maybe at some future point, Julia will prove that she knows the fighting skill of karate. But until then, no. So we have Cassandra. Oh, there's a whole scene with O'Neill, the guy that she worked with. I have to get to that. So let me put a pin in that, and I'll get back to it, because there's a whole scene where guys drive an ambulance. We'll get to that scene. I forgot about it. We'll get to it. So Cassandra is now driving back, again pantomiming here. It's horrible, but it is what it is. So she's driving away. She's like, man, I gotta get to these girls. I gotta give them that sandwich that I told them I would get them. And so she parks where the girls are supposed to be. They're not there, of course, because she's like, well, I told them just stay here for like 8 hours. Wait for me while I'm reading this good book that I can't just take and stop reading. Cassandra then realizes that the girls are at the diner and they're getting killed by Ezekiel, and Cassandra tries to stop Ezekiel, but Ezekiel's choke and or combat is way too freaking strong, and she tries to like stab into him, and Ezekiel's like, please, woman, please. And he friggin' takes the knife from her in a very just kung fu amazing way and just stabs her And then Cassandra goes back to like where she parked this car, and she's like, okay, well, I guess that didn't work. Let's do over. So Cassandra then goes on, gets into the car, drives the car as quickly as she can because traffic, because it's bumper to bumper. And so Cassandra gets to the diner as Ezekiel is to just be there, just like, hey ladies, I'm gonna murder you again. And gets freaking rammed by this taxi into the diner. And I'm like, okay, like, that's cool. But Ezekiel is like unstoppable, and being rammed by this car like does nothing to him. Nothing. He's the Terminator. He's unstoppable. And so we have like Cassandra's like, well, come on, girls, let's get out of here. So they get out of there, they leave, and they make their way to this hotel where they're trying to like hopefully get off the grid and hide away. So let's get to the O'Neill scene. So O'Neill was the guy who was grilling and was talking to Cassandra while she was holding the Pepsi and not drinking it, while the guys are just like, hey, Pepsi, huh? And Cassandra's like, yeah, the choice of the new generation. Holding it, not drinking said thing. Because she probably had like 30 times where she was to be like, yeah, I really don't want to drink a Pepsi. I don't like this product, but I gotta sponsor it. So I'll hold on to it right here. So we have O'Neill in an early part of the film who is at this place where there had been this fire. We have the firemen who are coming in and out of this location, and we have Cassandra who's doing like pressure on this guy and CPRing him and trying to revive him. And like I would have just been like, give me the paddles. Even if he doesn't need it, paddles. So while also like trying to like keep this guy alive, Cassandra is also seeing Ben having this guy just gurneyed or strolled out or whatever. Cassandra's like, well, hey, like, check his chest. And Ben is like, oh, well, thankfully she said that, because I would have had no idea to just look at this guy's chest. Good thing Cassandra's on the ball. So, why? Like, we could say that Cassandra, like, had this just inner thought, sight, whatever, about this guy, but still. So, we have Cassandra who's just helping out everybody, because time loop. And so O'Neill's like, well, okay, like, I'm going to leave and I'm going to go to this other location. And Cassandra's like, well, no, like, don't leave. How about I take your keys and I'll drive? And O'Neill's like, no. No. So O'Neill drives off, and Cassandra's like, man, if only I would have just taken the reins and I would have just stopped O'Neill. Because O'Neill drives off, and he immediately gets hit by this truck and dies. Cassandra tries to, like, revive him and help him and whatever. And Ben's like, dude, he's dead. He's dead. You did the best you could. You tried to prevent him, even with your time loop powers. It didn't work. Ben doesn't know about the time loop powers, but eventually, you know, he should. He should know. So, we have O'Neill. He dies, and Cassandra is at home, and Ben eventually messages her. It's like, hey, like, can you make it to the funeral? It'll help all the friends out. And like, I get it, like, people are weirded out by you because you technically killed O'Neill because you didn't do everything in your power to try to stop him from crashing into that vehicle, but you didn't really know now, did you? You didn't really know. You just thought you were going crazy. So back to the hotel. So we have the girls. Oh, also, Cassandra reads that book, and she reads the book and she's seeing all the powers that are possible for a person like Madame Web's character to get. She starts climbing on the, tries to climb on the wall. She slips and falls, and she's like, "Well, I guess I don't have that power." Because she was trying to mimic what Ezekiel was doing, and she's not. She doesn't have that same power set. Maybe the girls only get a certain power. Who knows? So, but I also thought that that scene was kind of stupid. It's like, well, hey, if you were not going to give her the power, it just makes her look stupid. But then also, we have the other girls who never get any superpowers in this film. So, why is she partnered up with Madame Web if they don't actually have powers? How do they get said powers? Because they never show that in this film. It was stupid. It was dumb. So, back at the hotel where they're talking about the poison that Ezekiel can give people, and the only proper way to prevent people from getting this poison is CPR. Chest jiggling up and down. It's really all we get here. It's stupid. So, while Cassandra just dumps off all the girls to Ben Parker so she could take a lavish mystery uh, trip off to Peru, she's like, you know what? I just want to soak up and get a tan and just kind of like just see if I can figure out what's all going on here. Like, I'm going to read a book while the girls are just sitting in this forest somewhere, and I'm just going to go and take a trip to Peru while these girls are just fending for themselves, eventually going to get killed by Ezekiel again, almost. We have Cassandra who takes this flight to Peru after dumping off the girls to Ben Parker, and Ben's like, well, hey, like, you weren't able to control this situation, like, this just happened to you. So hey, I'll look at the I'll look into like just keeping these girls safe and having Mary Parker, a pregnant woman, with me at that same time, which makes no sense, but it makes sense for story purposes because Mary Parker is gonna have her water break for a future Peter Parker to slide on out. You know what I'm saying? That Peter. So Peter Cottontail. So Cassandra goes off Peru to meet up with Santiago, not the bird from Aladdin, but Santiago. I believe that's what the dude's name is. And Cassandra ends up getting just kind of like pushed into this water for her to remember her past. Because I guess this is just like baptized power situation. Maybe this girl just really needs to be in the water all the time to just really have her powers really just kick in. I don't know. Anyways, so Cassandra goes into the water and she then sees like the entire extended scene of her mother and Ezekiel and everything that happened between the two of them. She's like, "Oh, so you went to Peru while you were pregnant with me for what reason? Like, do you hate me that much? Do you just want just the riches and gold that you were going to get from this Peru trip? I hate you. And Peru shoots the goons and then shoots Constance. And then we come to find out that Constance is in this hospital, as I like to say. And we come to find out that there is something health wise wrong. And we're thinking, oh, yeah, Constance just has this illness. And, like, again, we're having, like, Webb, Madam, who's just like, man, like, you are so selfish. Like, you're going on and you're trying to, like, save yourself while being pregnant with me, and you're taking all these risks going to the Amazon. Come to find out, Cassandra had a birth defect, and Constance was trying to save Madam Web. And Madam Web was like, wait a minute, like, I don't have this condition. And the whole reason why she doesn't have the condition is because she went to Peru and her mother got spider bitten, and that went to not only affect Constance, but then also affected her womb. And I was like, okay, so baby's okie dokie. But then we have Cassandra, who hugs it out with her ghost mom. And I was like, okay, like, this is nice, even though I'm like, you shouldn't be able to technically hug a ghost, and this is just a flashback scene. But, like, I guess we can just hug ghosts now. Whatever. So, Cassandra realizes, like, oh, like, my whole life of just hating my mother for reasons I didn't understand, and bringing up in the baby shower that, like, her mother died in childbirth, but hey, like, she was in the Amazon and there was not a hospital anywhere near, and this and that. Like, my mother was reckless. Come to find out, she was trying to save baby Madam Web. She was trying to save baby Web. So Cassandra goes and's like, okay, like, I get it now. Like, and so we have Santiago, who feeds her with great power comes great responsibility, but he words it differently because we have to have great power, great responsibility worded in every Spider-Man thing. It just has to be said in a different way. If you watch Amazing Spider-Man, they phrase it differently in that too. Why? Because they just have to. They just have to make you just go, oh, great power, great responsibility. You said it again. Good for you. In another way. So Cassandra comes back to Peru because just a travel flight from Peru is just, it's easy. While Ben is going on and talking with the girls and just having a good time, maybe playing canasta or maybe Galaga. For those of you that remember the Avengers movie, you'll get that reference. So we have Ben, who is with Mary Parker, and Mary's like, hey, I need to go to the hospital because I'm having a baby. My water just broke. And Ben is almost slipping, sliding on the water. But he's like, okay, girls, like, we got to go to the hospital. And so they all leave. They all go to the hospital. And we, of course, have the girls who are wearing hoods. But we, of course, have one of the girls who is looking out the window because she saw something cool on the TV. She maybe saw, like, the animated 90s Spider-Man. She's like, wait a minute, I gotta see what that is. Maybe it was something cool. And the camera just took a picture of her face. And so we have Amaria, the henchman of Ezekiel, and she's like, well, hey, I have a spotting of these girls. And Ezekiel is like, okay, great. And, like, the police were gonna go and get these girls, but Ezekiel makes the call and he's like, oh, no, these aren't the drones you're looking for. And Ezekiel goes and he gets the girls. And I'm kind of curious exactly how much does Amaria know of what's going to happen with Ezekiel and these girls. Does she know that like they're going to get killed? Does she not give a crap? I'm curious. I want to know. Cause it seems like this girl might be oblivious, or she might know, like, man, that guy's gonna come in there and choke slam and kill some people. I don't know. But I wanna know. So Ezekiel comes in and he wants to choke a bit. A choke a bit. You know what I mean? And so Ezekiel is just on this sign, just kind of waiting around, knowing that these girls are gonna be right there because he also has this kind of psychic ability also. Because he has the dream. He has the dream of being able to know where certain people are. But it seems that he also has this psychic ability. And so why is it that, like, that makes it so, like, Cassandra and Ezekiel are at this even keel? Even to the point where Cassandra goes back at that diner and they have this kind of psychic link together where Ezekiel is talking to Cassandra, but Ezekiel is not really there, but he's there. And he's talking to her and he's like taunting her. And like there's a whole talk between that whole scene, which I thought it was actually interesting, but like I think people also like had mentioned, like even Geek Felution mentioned, is like, well, why did she need to go all the way to freaking Peru then? She could have had just mind meld with Santiago guy, and it would have been great. It would have been great. Like save some travel miles. So Cassandra goes on and is driving, trying to figure out where the girls are, and she's driving with this ambulance. And we come to somehow having Cassandra be driving this ambulance through this sign to ram into Ezekiel again, while Ben Parker and all the girls are kind of trapped in this traffic accident situation, etc. So we now have to have the girls again, like, hey, you gotta run, like, we gotta get out of here. Ben and Mary just stay in the car and hopefully you can make a baby in the car. I don't know. Not make a baby because they're brother and sister, but that's weird. You know, pop out the baby because they're gonna have to go to the hospital, but you know, the baby is gonna be in the hospital. And it's like, well, hey, what could the name be? It's like, I don't know. That was so dumb. Just say it's Peter Parker. Like it seems like there's so much about this movie that they didn't want to do to avoid having somebody like be in here for like a copyright reason. Like, oh no, you referenced this character in this film, now you have to pay so and so random person a fee because Richard Parker was in this movie for 10 seconds. So we have the girls that are now running off. They're trying to get away from Ezekiel. He wants to choke slam him and elbow him and give him the people's elbow and DDPs and RKOs. And so she's like, man, I want to just not. Where are my hands going? Moving on. Nothing can stop the claw. You guys remember Liar Liar? That movie? Probably not. So Ezekiel's chasing after him, and here's where we meet the Pepsi sign. Because the girls are trying to figure out a way through this building to escape, and we're roughly at the ending here. And Cassandra is now getting much better at her powers. And Santiago was to even go on and tell Cassandra, it's like, well, hey, like, you can do a number of things, like, if you really can just master this power. And Cassandra's like, well, yeah, that's great and all, but, like, what can I really do against Ezekiel? And Santiago's like, meh. Like, well, with great power comes great responsibility. Suck it up, woman. Figure out how to win. So, Cassandra is to just take these road flares and is take the, like, defibrillator and have when Ezekiel just jumps onto the ambulance, she defibs him, or has one of the girls defib him and electrocutes him, and he falls off the car and smashes into this thing of glass again. Kind of cool, but it's starting to be comedic how many times that Ezekiel is just bashing into these vehicles and should be dead at this point. Why isn't he dead? It's a Terminator, I tell you. It's unstoppable. So then again, we have to ask, like, why isn't Spider-Man dead through, like, 18 films and all the crap that he had to deal with? Either that or why does he still have limbs? So, from all that swinging, man. So, I'm going on rants, so my apologies. So, Ezekiel is now chasing down these women, and there's only so many road flares and all these things that can go flying and careening off everywhere. And so they're now at the top of this building, and Cassandra is using every single bit of her ability to stop all these, like, kind of flares from hitting them, and she's like grabbing this metal piece and she's like deflecting everything, and she's like doing all of these cool things with her powers, and the girls are like, oh my god, now you're showing off. Now you're showing off here. Ooh, you're showing off. Kind of gets annoying, but I digress. So we finally have the showdown between the Webben and the Ezekiel, because the girls are trying to climb on this apparatus as they have called for a helicopter escort to get them out of this situation. And so the girls are like on this structure, and they're like, hey, like, I'm slipping here. Ooh, I'm slipping here. Ooh, I can't climb up here. And now it's just a showdown between Madam Web and Ezekiel, because all the other girls, like, just don't have good enough grip strength, climbing ability, and whatever what have you. So Ezekiel is going on and taunting Cassandra. It's like, ha ha ha, like, you're not going to go on to be able to save all these girls and then take me down. Like, you have to choose the form of your destructor. Ghostbusters. And so Cassandra's like, well, hey, like, evidently you didn't watch the Nicolas Cage movie Next, and you didn't realize I can go on and not only just whip you, but then save all these other girls with my ability to just tether myself out. And I was like, okay, like, this could be an interesting power, but then again, if there is ever going to be another thing that is to be added with this character, how well is it going to be really worked out in future film? Which I highly doubt that that'll possibly happen. I would love it to, but then again, like, all these other young girls are gonna either be aged out or whatever. They're gonna have to be like older women and recasted probably. Either that, I don't think that they're gonna like make them look 20 years older, because there should be a point where all these girls come back and they're like 20 years older, right? Because it's 2024 currently to the taping of this video, and this was 2003, right? Maybe it's 2004. I digress. So Cassandra and Ezekiel, this all boils down to, having Ezekiel having the Pepsi sign, because the S, P, and I and all falling because spy. Uh, Spider Man? No, it's spy. So the building that has Pepsi Cola big fat sign, because the sponsor of this film, falls on Ezekiel, and that's where Cassandra is looking at Ezekiel, and she's like, "Yeah, like you know what? Like you were dreaming about these girls whipping your butt, but you didn't realize the one woman that was gonna whip your butt, and that was me, that was me all up in here. Like I was gonna take you down." And so we realized that Ezekiel, like, is he dead here? Definitively, is he dead? Does he come back for Squeakquel and he ends up having to get beaten up again by the group of girls like we saw in the early part of this film? What the heck? But let's move on because we have to wrap this up. I'm taking far too long. My apologies. So we then have Cassandra just whipping Ezekiel, but even though he's the Terminator, cue us now realizing like, okay, like the battle is over, and Cassandra now can go on and live with the girls in happy bliss. And she's in a wheelchair and she's blind because she has to be these things because she's Madam Web. And so Madam Web is knowing what all is going on before it happens, even though she's blind and she's in a wheelchair because she's the freaking best. She's got to be title character. But, you know, she's the best. So, Madam Web is telling people that they're going to sneeze before they do and that they should do all kinds of things. And, like, the girls are like, wow, like how do you know all this? And she's like, well, I'm Madam Web, bitches. I'm Madam Web. So, we come to find that Cassandra can see all and see deep into the future and see that the girls are all wearing the spandex and they're all going to stand together and be superheroes one day against a force that isn't presented besides burglars and hooligans and thieves. And Cassandra's like, yeah, you guys are going to be like a real force someday if anybody cares about a sequel. And that's kind of how they wrap up the film. There is no end credits scene. And I was like, really? Like, there's no costume fight? There's a whole scene that was to tell us that there was going to be a costume fight in this film, and it never happens. What a lie. And so I was just like, it's a decent film, bizarrely, but there were so many things about this where I was like, okay, that irked me. The clickbait thing irked the crap out of me. And it always makes me want to say, it's like, well, like when I think of film, like there's no way that a film could get worse. Like another Marvel film or superhero film kind of sneaks in, it's like, oh, like we're gonna find a way to make it worse. But I came to this film with absolutely no, and I mean below zero, like below freezing. Heck, hell has frozen over kind of like expectations of low. And I was like, okay, like I could be fine with this film because like I was expecting the worst and at least they gave me a film. Like I still think that like Dark Phoenix and whatever the heck the Marvels were are pretty freaking bad films. And I stand by that until there's a worse off film, which I'm sure there is. Yes, Madam Web is going to be within a top 5 of worst superhero films, but for the life of me, like, I can't say that Madam Web is going to be the worst film ever. It's laughable, but it's laughable how bad parts of this is, but I can't say it's the worst. So I'm gonna peace out A Town, because I know that at some point, people are gonna look at the runtime of this like, mother hour and 40 minutes. That was the time of the movie, or that was even more than the film. And I apologize, but I at least wanted to do a review. So, um, I am also kind of kicking around possibly doing just reaction videos. I am kind of worried about copyrights, and I don't want whatever video I do to just get claimed and then me be really effed channel wise. But like, I'm starting to realize that like, reviews may not work. I might have to pivot somehow, and I have no clue how to do that. Uh, but uh, really, a lot of the huge success that I had was really in the past. And so there's no way to just like re-kick or restart that off, besides trying to figure out some way to still uh, do another way of doing those same old things in a different way. Maybe doing reactions or reviews, or reactions, um, reactions, or uh, other commentary, something or other, could be a means of me figuring out a way to possibly get viewership back, or get, I don't know. So plus, a lot of people are gonna say it's like, hey, be more consistent about your videos. I get that. I understand. With the technical problems of which that I've had recently, that has been a thing of my hiatus. Uh, my health has also been a reason for my hiatus, to try and lose some weight, down to. I had gotten down to 230 pounds, but then I couldn't lose any more weight at all past that point. So I've gained back a little bit of weight, I think, but I'm gonna get to a point where hopefully I can get back to losing even more weight than 230 pounds is my goal. To get to 200, hopefully, is my big goal. And so yeah, I'm gonna get out of here to try to diminish my shorten the video up. Goodbye, everybody. Bye, everybody.